Thanks for being here. Subscribe to Cheating Stories Best, so you don't miss new stories.
A wife begs for forgiveness, but her husband responds by telling her, in tonight's final installment, everything will be resolved. Enjoy the show! Hello? Connie said, smiling and speaking in a very soft voice. Yes, I would really like that. Yes, of course, I promise we'll be all alone. Maybe you can show me yours first, and then we'll see what happens. Cheryl just frowned as she listened to the conversation. One of your guys? She grinned as Connie hung up. No, yours, Connie grinned in response. Cheryl's face darkened with anger. Connie laughed at her friend. We were talking about cars, dumbass, she said. The only way he would talk to me was to convince him that I wanted to buy a Mustang. He loves his car so much that it has apparently become something of a religion for him. I think he transferred all the love he felt for you to this car. Cheryl smiled. Why are you smiling like that now? Connie asked. I don't mind him being in love with a car, Cheryl said. I would die if I found out that he was wasting his energy on another woman. I can survive the car. Why? Connie asked. 'Cause he's mine, Cheryl said fiercely. Divorced or not, he is mine. I don't want to hear about him having a night with another woman. It would kill me. You mean how you did this to him? Connie asked. Cheryl turned pale and began to cry. It didn't mean anything. It was just intim. It had nothing to do with my love for him. I just needed to know what it was like, Cheryl said. So how is this different from if he had an intimate with someone else? Connie asked. You're really confusing me, Cheryl said. Women always put men down for chasing night without understanding romance or the true meaning of emotional connection. You had this guy who worshipped the ground you walked on, and you ruined everything by cheating on him. You constantly try to justify it by saying it was just a night or satisfying curiosity, but when we raise the question that he can do the same, that's another story. It's double standards, isn't it? It just sounds crazy. Cheryl looked at her feet. I can't change the past. I can only make the future better, she said. Cheryl, I really hope you understand what you had, Connie said. Roger told me today that he wouldn't mind being fifth in line to sleep with me. In his understanding, the main thing is that he enjoys it. It made me realize that none of the guys I was with cared about me. Connie also lowered her head. I understand now why you were so upset, but you have to face the fact that you may have hurt him too much to get back what you had. I didn't realize it myself until I saw him today. It was much harder for him than for you. At least you knew what was going on. At least you did the things that ruined your marriage. At least you were looking for something, and he was stunned by the one who was the most important person to him. He may never love or even trust anyone again. I'll let you know what happens when I meet him tonight. When Connie finished work, she drove to the same bar where she first saw Rob. She took the same table where he had sat with his friends, including Roger. Since the morning, the thought of Roger had irritated Connie. She had thought several times about the possibility of a more serious relationship between them, but now she realized that this was impossible. Of course, in this idiot's defense, there were many times when she was so overcome with desire that any man would do. Then she looked for Roger. Maybe it was because she was getting older, but things started to feel different. The thought of making love to the same man over and over again made her bored and disgusted. She had never had any doubts about married men because she believed she was just borrowing them, not stealing them, since she never intended for anything long-term. But lately, the thought of having her own man had started to make her feel warm. The biggest shock to her was what happened to Cheryl that afternoon. It wasn't just that she practically attacked poor Cheryl for behavior that she herself had committed in much worse forms, but that after Cheryl left almost in tears, Connie looked at the mothers with small children and felt a sense of sadness. She even stroked her belly as if something was growing there. Connie snapped out of her thoughts just in time to see Rob slowly approach her table. He moved as if he were walking through long grass, expecting to see a snake. She looked at him again. He was tall, about 6 feet 1 inch, and muscular. He had dark hair and eyes. The eyes seemed dark and cynical, but according to Cheryl, this was not always the case. Hey, Rob, Connie said, putting on her most disarming smile. She signaled to the waitress, who took their orders. Rob actually tried to pay for their drinks until Connie reminded him that she was the one who invited him to the meeting, and therefore she had to pay for the first round. He pulled out several brochures and quote sheets from dealers for different Mustang models. Rob, I'm sorry, but I can't lie to you, Connie said. You're too good for that. No matter what happens between us, I will never lie to you. I will never be dishonest with you in any aspect. He nodded and looked at her. Connie thought he relaxed a little. "I'd really like to see your car," Connie said, "but I don't think I can afford one. The main reason I wanted to talk to you, well, there are two. You won't like one very much, but I hope you will like the second." He stood up and prepared to leave. "Rob, please don't go," Connie said. "I'm not interested," he said. "Isn't it interesting?" Connie asked. "Roger told me that you want something from me. He warned me to be careful, but he needed me to at least show up because of some agreement you made with him." Rob said, "So Roger told everything?" Connie answered sharply. He nodded. "Why did he do this?" "Brothers are more important than women." Rob chuckled. "But you came anyway," she asked. "Why?" "Because he needed me to come so he could get what you promised him," he said. "You're an easy target, and he wants his way," Rob said regretfully. "Did he tell you what I want?" she asked. "All I know is that it has something to do with her," he said. "But it doesn't matter, I'm done with her. It took me almost a year, but now I am stronger. As the Who song says, I won't be fooled again." "So you're done with her, huh?" Connie asked. He nodded, smiling confidently. "Cheryl," he said. His face darkened. "Cheryl Thomas," she added. He frowned and rubbed his eyes. "Friday was the anniversary of the day you married her 15 years ago. It was the happiest day of your life, wasn't it?" "No," he scoffed. "Are you lying to me, Rob?" she asked. "No," he said angrily. "It was only the second lucky day. The first was the one when I met her." He turned to leave again. "Rob, please don't go," Connie said softly. "I'm not trying to hurt you or deceive you. I told you what was happening as soon as you sat down. Actually, I like you, and I would like to help you, whether you believe me or not." "Why?" he asked. "Rob, I know what you've been through. I heard this from Cheryl on Friday night. I know what she did to you and what it did to her. I know how much you sacrificed for her and how it all ended. I know how meeting her and falling in love with her changed your life, and maybe I want some of that magic for myself," Connie said. "I already told you I don't want to have an intim," Rob said. "I'm not offering you intimate," Connie said. "I offer you what you need more." "And what is this?" he asked. "A friend," Connie said. "You really need someone to talk to every now and then, even if it's just someone who will listen to you. You've heard of friends with benefits? We can be friends without benefits." He looked at her as if he was considering it. He sat down, which was a good sign. She noticed his shoulders slumped, and he looked terrible. It seemed that all the bravado with which he approached her was just a facade. "I loved her so much," he said. "Rob, she loves you too," Connie said. "More than anything I've ever seen. People aren't perfect, Rob. We all make mistakes and bad decisions. We all take things for granted and only then realize that they are actually conditional. This woman has been living in hell for 11 months now. She had to come to terms with the fact that she did something really stupid that alienated her loved one forever. Can you imagine such pain?" His eyes darkened so suddenly that she thought he had blinked. A moment ago, he had been sad and depressed, but now an angry bear stood in front of her. He stood up and grabbed Connie's hand, dragging her out of the bar. He led her to his car. She could understand why he loved it. It was the most brilliant black she had ever seen, more polished than most limousines. Everything on the car that wasn't black shone with chrome like nothing she'd ever seen. Even the interior was completely black or chrome. When he started the engine, the car vibrated. The next sound she heard was the squeal of tires trying to grip the road. Suddenly, they were thrown forward at breakneck speed. The cold night air coming through the window calmed Connie slightly. Now, if only he would slow down, she thought. 10 minutes later, they found themselves in front of the lake. He parked at least a foot from the concrete barriers. He explained to her that he was worried about how low the front spoiler was to the ground. "So, where did we stop?" he asked. "Oh yes, you talked about hell. You talked about the hell Cheryl went through." Connie nodded and got out of the car. She led him to a bench in front of the gently rolling waves under the moonlight. This could have been very romantic under other circumstances. "Do you think the hell she went through is comparable to the fact that I loved a woman so much that I wanted to become a part of her? I loved her so much that I changed my life plans to include her in them. Cheryl was everything to me. Everything I did for us. I always put her first, no matter what. I knew right away when she slept with the first guy, even after a few days. I waited for her to tell me about it. I knew it had to be a mistake, or she was drunk, or she had been tricked. I tried to forget about it, but I began to wonder if there were others, so I did the cliché thing. I hired a detective to follow her. It was terrible, like I didn't trust her, but I had to know. After all, she was my life. I had already decided not to say anything about the first guy because I didn't want to lose her. I just forgot about my pride and decided to let everything go because I would rather have Cheryl than my pride. When the detective told me about the second guy, I felt bad and literally went home and slept in the guest room because I couldn't face her. I also just stopped having an intim with her. I felt like I was dying inside. I couldn't understand why. What did I do wrong? Why doesn't she love me anymore? Then, when I got the call from the detective about the third guy, I knew I had to confront her. I was going to just wait for them to finish and leave quietly, but what they said hurt me so much that I could not remain silent. I just wanted her to know that I was still there and that she hurt me so much. I think at that moment, I thought that maybe, deep down, she still cared about me as a person, perhaps as a friend, even if she could never love me the way I loved her. And she did. So I made the biggest mistake of my life. When I walked through the door, they were so busy with each other that they didn't even notice me. I couldn't move. I was just frozen there. It felt like my soul was being torn apart with every move he made. I'm sure women think about it differently, and I've tried to be modern, but I can't. Men are wired to believe that their partners belong to them. More than that, this was the woman I wanted to be with for the rest of my life. Ever since we became a couple, I foolishly believed that we loved each other and belonged only to each other. My greatest dream was that we would have children and grow old together. Do you know what a pain it is to hear some idiot call your wife his little bad? Do you know what it's like when he asks her if she wants him to knock her up? I almost died when I heard this. My heart was beating so loudly that I was sure they heard it. And then she hurt me again, even worse. I waited, hoped, and prayed for her to say no, so that she would remember that this was something meant only for her husband. Even if her body no longer belonged to me, and perhaps never did, I very clearly heard her say, "Oh yes, this is what I want." Something inside me died then. I don't think I can ever get it back. Perhaps it was my ability to love or trust, or my innocence, but whatever it was gone. I'm a different person now. I'm just not capable of caring about anything anymore. The only thing I appreciate is the car behind us. So I just started applauding them as if I was watching a great movie being played right in front of me. Cheryl became just another available girl for me, and I no longer cared about such women. I warned this guy not to say a word, but he couldn't stop himself from commenting. He forced me to beat him. I was just trying to be modern and mature in this situation. I had already decided to just grab some clothes and leave. After all, Cheryl didn't belong to me. It was her body, and she could share it with anyone. The only reason one person devotes himself to another is that he loves them. I think it was hard for me to realize that I had dedicated my life to someone who didn't feel the same way about me. So I beat him up. Then I looked at her and just realized that I didn't want to see her anymore. I didn't want any clothes. I just wanted to get as far away from her as possible. She was poison to me. I found a job in a neighboring state and started a new life. None of my friends talked to her. I was very clear that if either of them told her anything about me, they were no longer my friends. The only one I gave a break to was my mom. I knew my mom was getting old and lonely, so I let her talk to Cheryl, but I warned her that if she ever tells Cheryl anything about where I am, I will stop communicating with her. I transferred back here because my mother's health is deteriorating. This city is big enough for both of us. I've been here for over a month now, and I've only run into her once by chance. I'll never go to that bar again. She can take it for herself. I'm not dating, so we won't cross paths. Everything will be fine. I have absolutely no interest in what she does or with whom. She can't hurt me any more than she already has. So please don't tell me any more of that crap about the hell she went through. At least she had a choice. She arranged everything herself. Connie noticed that he had become a little calmer. "I'll take you back to the bar," he said. "Sit down," she ordered him. She sat him down on the bench next to her again. She's not dating anyone. She doesn't do anything. She talks to your mom on the phone and visits her a couple of times a week. She's dying because of what she did to your marriage, and so are you. Is there even the slightest chance that you can forgive her? Connie asked. Rob didn't say anything. The wind made Connie shiver, but she didn't want to leave. Rob was wearing a shirt and sweater. He took off his sweater and draped it over Connie's shoulders. This gesture surprised her. "What do you do for fun?" Rob asked. "I wash my car, go to car shows, and work on it," he replied. They talked for about another half hour before Rob drove her back to her car. She drove home and immediately called Cheryl. Connie told Cheryl all the details. Cheryl's heart broke again when she heard that Rob knew about all her adventures, even though it was only 3 times. Retelling each of her encounters from his point of view felt like being stabbed with a knife. When she heard that he was pretending to be sick to avoid having a night with her, she cried and felt sick about what she had done. Again, when Connie told her the details from Rob's perspective about the meeting that led to his departure, she even vomited. She imagined herself in his place, watching Greg try to knock her up, even though it was impossible, and she wanted to die. "You didn't tell him that I didn't enjoy intim with Greg or anyone else, and that I was just saying that to get him over it?" she asked. "I don't think you would believe me," Connie replied. "So my husband really believes that I don't love him and prefer other men?" Cheryl asked. "He must be crazy. I have never loved anyone but him. I respected my parents, but I never felt for them the way I feel for him. He's gone crazy. You have to tell him the truth, Connie. You have to tell him why I did these terrible things," Cheryl said. "Cheryl, you have to give this time," Connie said. "You need to give him time for the pain to subside a little before you try to change his mind." Over the next few weeks, Connie and Rob communicated frequently. First, she called him, and they talked for several minutes. Over time, the conversations became longer and longer, and Rob began to call her himself. Then they started dating and going for car rides. It got to the point where he told her everything. Connie didn't insist on discussing Cheryl. She often told him that Cheryl still loved him, but he ignored it. Connie also told Cheryl in detail about her conversations with Rob. Sometimes Connie would even record their conversations and let Cheryl listen to them, just so she could hear her husband's voice. Cheryl still considered Rob her husband. She agreed to the divorce not because it would end their marriage in her eyes, but because it was what he wanted, and she legally could not resist it. Then, a few weeks later, Cheryl came up with the idea of a conference call. She decided to give it a try. She wanted so badly to hear Rob's voice again, at least on the phone. She was also tormented by suspicion and fear. She noticed that Rob's voice sounded excited and animated when he and Connie were just talking about something. He often took her with him to car shows or movies, and they went to the lake and talked a lot. But she also noticed that when they talked about Cheryl, Rob's voice became even strained. He quickly turned the conversation to another topic. So, Connie called Cheryl and then added Rob to the conversation. Rob didn't know that Cheryl was also on the line. He was excitedly telling Connie about his trip to Michigan for the car show last weekend. He went to an exhibition called Mustang Memories, which was dedicated only to Mustang Stangs and other Ford cars. While he was there, he saw a woman whom he considered the most beautiful in the world. She had reddish hair and drove a grabber orange Mustang with green stripes. She was so beautiful that he even thought about approaching her, but he chickened out. Connie noticed that Cheryl had muted the phone and then hung up. She told Rob that she had something urgent to do and that she would call him back later. Her reaction was due to 2 reasons. Firstly, she was worried about Cheryl, and secondly, because Cheryl was right, Connie was really starting to fall in love with Rob. They both didn't need some beautiful woman with a passion for cars interfering with their plans for Rob. She called Cheryl back and tried to calm her down. Connie dialed Cheryl's number, but the phone kept ringing and ringing. Connie felt something was wrong. Finally, after receiving no answer, she called Rob again. He was still happy and ready to discuss what he did at the car show last weekend. During the conversation, Rob talked about all the Mustangs he saw at the show, the special editions, and all the different years and models that were there. Connie didn't want to interrupt him when he was so happy, but she really wanted to know more about this woman. When Rob spoke, Connie felt uneasy. If she had to define her feelings more precisely, it would probably be fear. Everything went the way she wanted, and now some mysterious woman appeared and ruined everything. Just a few days ago, before he went to this damn exhibition, he took her to the lake for a full day of picnicking. They swam, grilled together, talked, and even built a fire and lay on a blanket looking at the stars as the sun set. It was the best date of her life. He asked many questions about her. Connie had dated many guys, but none of them made her feel the way he did. They had long since crossed the line where all he had to do was make a move, and she would sleep with him on demand. She was not going to deceive herself. She wanted him very much. But she was willing to wait because she wanted not just another fling with Rob, but something special. She knew she was walking a very fine line between 2 people, Rob on one side and Cheryl on the other. She really had to choose between 2 things she never had. She had never had a close friend because women can be extremely jealous of each other, especially when it comes to a woman who attracts men the way Connie did. She also had never had a serious relationship with a man. There were lovers, boyfriends, and affairs, but no potential lifelong relationships. Connie knew she couldn't have both. If she gets Rob, she will lose her friendship with Cheryl, and if she remains loyal to Cheryl, she won't get Rob. As Rob continued talking in the background about the Elena specials, Connie heard a knock on the back door. She wondered who could be visiting her in the middle of the night on a Thursday. She looked through the peephole and was relieved to see Cheryl. Connie told Rob to wait a minute and let Cheryl in. Cheryl looked terrible. She was crying again, her eyes red and her short hair disheveled. She didn't even bother to look at the clothes she was wearing. She had a sneaker on one foot and a sandal on the other. She wore shorts and a jacket, but under the jacket, she only had a bra. Connie put a finger to her lips for silence and put her phone on speaker. Rob continued talking about cars. Connie slowly began to lead him to talk about the woman. At first, when he talked about the car, she asked what color it was. Then she started asking about certain colors of cars he had seen. Finally, she started asking about orange cars, and he mentioned a Grabber orange Mustang with green stripes. He spent a lot more time talking about the car than he did about the woman, so in Connie's opinion, it wasn't that serious. She began asking him general questions about the woman, such as what color her eyes were or what her voice sounded like. Rob then reminded her that he hadn't actually met the woman, he just saw her at an exhibition. Both Connie and Cheryl smiled at this. Neither of them had any reason to worry so much. She's just some unknown woman from out of state. He'll probably never see her again, Connie said. Connie asked him why he didn't come over and introduce himself. Rob started acting like a teenager. He told her that he was too nervous to approach such a woman or that he didn't think she would pay attention to him. He doubted that such a beautiful woman would be interested in an ordinary guy like him. By the time they changed the subject, both Connie and Cheryl were extremely relieved. Connie then found out that Rob hadn't actually dated anyone since he left Cheryl, but he told her it was probably time to start doing so. He didn't trust women anymore, except for Connie and his mom, but if he didn't want to be alone for the rest of his life, he would have to try to meet someone. Maybe you've already met her, and you just need to let her know that you like her, Connie said. Cheryl's eyes narrowed dangerously. Maybe you just need to take the initiative, Rob. There are two options. Either you tell this woman that you like her, and then she will either say she's not interested or maybe agree to go on a date with you, or you'll just sit on the sidelines of life, dreaming and wondering what could have been if you had the courage to go after what you want. Cheryl looked like she was about to explode. She pointed at the phone several times. I'll call you back later, Rob, Connie said. I can't believe you. Cheryl screamed. She was on the verge of both violence and tears. What are you talking about? Connie asked with an innocent look. You want to have my husband for yourself, don't you? Cheryl asked. Well, Connie began. Well, you damn. Cheryl blurted out. I can't believe I trusted you. I thought you were my friend. I'm your damn friend. Connie answered. For several weeks now, I have been your vest on which you shed your tears. I wiped the snot from your nose when you cried, but I'm human, and he's a really great guy. I didn't take a single step toward him to make him love me. I'm trying my best to get you two back together again, but if it doesn't work out, why shouldn't I try my luck? Because, as my friend, you should know that I will never stop trying to get him back. Whatever happens, if our plan doesn't work, I'll try something else. If he moves, I will do everything I can to find him and wait forever for him to return. I literally mean forever. I've already made mistakes once, it won't happen again. If he marries you, I will sit in my room and wait until you die. I won't try to kill you or poison you, but maybe I'll buy a voodoo doll and stick needles in it every day and slam its head against the wall. And I will continue to be friends with you. Is it true? Connie asked. Why? Because every time I come to visit you, I will see him and I will give him hints that he could have me at any time. And if you ever cheat on him or just hug another man, I will immediately tell him about it, and I will be there to pick up the pieces, Cheryl said. What if he cheats on me? Connie asked. I don't care, Cheryl said cruelly. Either I'll be the one he cheats on you with, or I'll hope you get a divorce. Either way, I'll win in the end. Rob and I will get back together, no matter what. Before Connie could react to Cheryl's tirade, the phone rang again. We're not done yet. Let him leave a message, Cheryl said in an icy tone. After several calls, they heard Rob leaving a message. Connie, don't be angry with me, but I thought about what you said. They heard Rob's voice. I decided that you were right. I need to take a risk. If I want to be happy, I have to take risks. I won't be able to go with you to the lake on Saturday. There's another car show in Michigan, and I'm going to go get that red-haired girl. I'll take the day off and go there tonight to get my car ready for the show. If everything goes well, I might even move there. Thanks for the advice. You are a wonderful friend. I'll call you when I get back." As soon as Rob hung up, Cheryl almost fell apart. "Now you've ruined everything, you stupid. We'll both lose him." He had almost forgotten about her until you filled his head with your nonsense about taking risks. "I hate you." Cheryl got up from the floor and left Connie's house. She got into her car and almost crashed into a tree while driving out of her driveway. She drove away, moving uncertainly along the road, tires squealing. Connie was shocked. She couldn't believe she had convinced Rob to try to meet a woman. She was sure that he was not ready for this and hoped that when he was ready, she would be that woman. All she had done as his friend was lead him to this new woman. She doubted that Rob would sleep with this woman over the weekend, so when he returned, she would have to play it big. If Rob was healed enough to start looking for a woman, he was healed enough to start seeing them. Connie was going to make sure he noticed what she had to offer, despite what Cheryl thought. As Connie closed the door, she heard a loud crash. It sounded like something had happened just a few blocks away. She had a bad feeling. She grabbed her cell phone from the table and ran out the door. Rob's phone rang as he was driving down the highway. He decided not to answer. After a few rings, the call was forwarded to his voicemail. He hated talking on the phone while driving. Driving was a special time for him, just him, his favorite car, and the road. Rob liked to drive fast, so he constantly had to be on guard to avoid getting caught or bumping into police cars. The damn phone didn't stop ringing. He took it from the cup holder and looked at the screen. It was Connie. Ugh, he thought. He had told her he'd call when he got back. He decided to answer. "What?" he said sharply. "Rob, are you on your way already?" Connie asked, ignoring his rudeness. "Yes, already," he said. The tension in his voice conveyed obvious anger. "Well, you need to go back now," she said. "I don't know how to tell you this, but Cheryl crashed the car. She was seriously injured and is now in the hospital." Connie heard a loud noise as if Rob had dropped his phone and then the sound of squealing tires. "I'm on my way," Rob said. "Which hospital is she in?" Half an hour later, Rob burst into the visitor's lounge. Connie saw him and ran over to hug him. "What happened? How bad is it? Where is she?" "She's still in surgery," Connie said. Rob looked shocked. "They're putting a pin in her right ankle to stabilize it. The right leg is broken in 2 places, and the left leg and left arm are also broken. She has a severe head injury and has not yet regained consciousness. Doctors are worried about a possible concussion or worse. Even if there's no brain damage, recovery will take several months." Rob closed his eyes and shook his head. She was driving recklessly, but that wasn't the main problem. She forgot to turn on the headlights. A car driving through the intersection didn't see her without them and crashed into her. It was just an accident. What could have upset her so much? He asked. Rob began pacing back and forth across the room. Connie looked at him. "What's wrong with her? How could she be so careless?" he shouted. "Please, God, let her be okay. Why would she do something so stupid?" "Rob, I can answer your questions," she said, "but you won't like it, and you won't believe it. The reason she was so upset was because of you. Believe it or not, this woman still loves you." Rob seemed stunned. The very possibility that Cheryl still had feelings for him was something he just couldn't wrap his head around. "Connie," Rob said, "until she gets better, let's just agree not to discuss all these issues. Let's focus on doing everything we can to get her better. Then we will deal with accusations and apologies." They waited a long time. At first, they thought the doctors had forgotten them. The operation lasted more than 4 hours. It was almost morning when the doctor entered the room and spoke to them. He said that Cheryl had been moved to a room on the 3rd floor and that she was resting. "Can we see her?" Connie asked. "Of course," said the doctor, "but she has not yet regained consciousness." Rob and Connie sat in the hospital room and watched Cheryl for several more hours. This time, it was Connie who paced back and forth across the room while Rob sat right next to Cheryl's sleeping form, holding her hand. Connie left at 8 a.m., promising to return later when she had time to sleep and change clothes. Rob simply nodded as she left. When he was alone with Cheryl, Rob felt worse. He didn't know if he was somehow responsible for her accident. After walking around the room for a while, he just started talking. "God, I hope you get better. I don't know what I would do if something took you away. I loved you so much, Cheryl. I don't know how we got to where we are now, but I wish I had a button to go back and prevent all this from happening. I'm not just talking about your stupid accident, I'm talking about the whole of last year. I wish we could go back to the time when you still loved me, when we were happy. Maybe I could have been smarter or tried harder to keep you. We would probably already be parents with a child, Rob thought. She moved, but then he realized it was just a reflexive jerk in response to something she was probably dreaming about. It's so bad, he continued. You're covered in bruises, and we don't know if or when you'll wake up. I also suffered a lot. I don't care anymore. I had a nightmare the other day, Cheryl, another nightmare, but this one was different. It wasn't the same as the usual one where I see with that guy in our bed. This dream was all about me. I was getting older and lonely, turning into an angry old man. I think that was the reason why I decided to take Connie's advice and try to find a new life. I don't want to become an angry, lonely old weirdo, so I need to find someone I can live my life with and be happy. Cheryl, I know you didn't love me the way I loved you. You probably never loved me like that, but now everything inside me hurts. I feel empty, and I don't want to live my life like this. I want to feel alive again, to feel like someone needs me. And yes, I still want to be a father, a good father. Maybe we can't do this together, but I want this with someone else. The doctors don't know why you haven't woken up yet. They've done a lot of tests, and they say they can't find anything wrong with your brain, but it might show up later. So, if you can't handle this, I want you to know that you were loved by a woman for almost 15 years, almost 16 if you count the time before our wedding. I loved you like no one else. You were the most beautiful thing in the world to me. It's hard to think that I will never be able to talk to you, hug you, or kiss you again. Rob leaned over and kissed Cheryl on the forehead. Her pulse on the monitors quickened. The nurse who monitored her indicators made a note about this in her chart. 2 more people noticed this. The first was Connie, who had returned a few minutes ago. She heard Rob speaking and saw him kiss Cheryl. The second person to notice what was happening was Cheryl herself. She woke up a little after Rob started talking to her. She was in pain, but she didn't want Rob to stop talking to her. And when he kissed her, she couldn't help herself. All she could do was pretend she was still asleep. Her heart rate quickened. She wanted him so badly. She never thought her husband would ever speak to her again, much less kiss her, but he did. Connie knocked on the door and quietly entered. Is she okay? Connie asked. She still hasn't woken up, Rob said. I'm worried about her. Rob, if you don't care about her, why should you care? Connie asked. Rob didn't say a word, he just looked at her angrily. Why don't you go home, change clothes, and eat? Connie suggested. I'll stay here, and if she wakes up, I'll call you. Rob nodded and left the room. Connie sat down in the chair next to the bed and took a magazine out of her bag. I think you would like to wake up earlier, she said to the figure on the bed. I woke up, Cheryl said, opening her eyes. I don't know what angers me more, this headache or your interference. Damn. He talked to me for the first time in almost a year, and he even kissed me, and you ruined everything by entering the room. Connie simply shrugged and smiled. When Rob returned to the hospital with a large bouquet of flowers, he spoke with the doctor about Cheryl's condition. The doctor told him that she would make an almost full recovery after several months of therapy. She had slight memory loss but was conscious and alert. They were still deciding when she could be discharged. Doctors usually insisted on 48 hours of observation, but the hospital was overcrowded, and insurance companies would no longer pay for long hospital stays if a person had loving relatives or family who could look after them. The new procedure was to send them home and let loved ones look after them. Rob entered the room and saw Connie talking to the nurse. The nurse came over and smiled at him, giving him a form to fill out. Rob filled it out and looked at Cheryl, who had not yet seen him. As he entered her field of vision, her face lit up. Hey, honey, I missed you, Cheryl said. Despite the bruises on her face, she seemed very beautiful to Rob. She extended her only good hand to him and raised her lips, as if expecting him to kiss her. Cheryl, what the hell is wrong with you? Asked Rob. What's wrong with you? She asked. You always kissed me when we met and when we said goodbye all those 12 years we were married. The nurse approached Rob and told him that Cheryl had suffered partial memory loss, so she might have trouble remembering details from the last year or so for the next few days. But he should just roll with it, and eventually, most of her memories would be restored when she returned home and found herself in a familiar environment. Rob returned to Cheryl with a smile on his face. Have you spoken to the nurse, dear? Cheryl asked. Yes, I did, honey, he said sarcastically. So, where's my kiss? Probably on my 5th place, he chuckled. I shouldn't have come here in the first place. Right now, I'm supposed to be in Michigan for a car show, but my problem is that I'm stupid and gullible. Connie and Cheryl looked at him. I was married to you for 14 years, and I truly believed that you loved me too until I found out how you really felt about me. I did nothing to harm you or take revenge. I just left after you destroyed our marriage and my heart. But apparently, this was not enough for you. Yes, Cheryl, I was your fool. I'm sure you've laughed at me a lot over the years, haha, but now I'm not so stupid anymore. Yes, you tugged at the old strings of my heart again and made me come to the hospital, scared for you. I think I still have some residual feelings because, like I said, I truly loved you with all my heart. But now you won't deceive me anymore. What are you talking about? Cheryl asked through tears. Of course you love me, and I love you with all my heart. That's why we got married, therefore, we will be together and happy for the rest of our lives. Cheryl, stop this nonsense, Rob said sharply. This amnesia won't work on me. Just because I was a fool again and came to make sure you were okay doesn't mean you can pull off this third-rate scam on me. You may have fooled your doctors and nurses, but that trick won't work on me. What trick? Cheryl asked. We got divorced about a year ago, Rob said sharply. What happened? Did you run out of random guys for a night and decide to make fun of me again? Maybe I should go home and catch you having an intimate with your lover again. Honestly, I still have questions about that first time. How is this supposed to work? After he made you a baby, were you going to leave me for him? Or were you going to make me think that puppy in your belly was mine while you continued to have a night with him at every chance you got? Rob, you don't understand anything. Please let me tell you what really happened. Cheryl sobbed. Are you going to tell me the truth? Rob asked. He noticed that the doctor and nurses were nearby and listening. Yes, Cheryl said. About all 3 guys? Yes, Rob asked. And about all the guys after our divorce, he inquired. It will be easy because there hasn't been anyone since then, not even a date, Cheryl said. See? Rob said, turning to the doctor and nurses. This can't be trusted. She is the greatest liar in the world. She doesn't have any memory loss. The doctor and nurses were surprised. Rob, I made a very big mistake. I wanted to experience something that turned out not to be worth what it cost me, Cheryl said sharply. But I never lied to you. Rob turned back to Cheryl. You promised to remain faithful only to me and disowned everyone else. Rob spat. I remember you saying yes after that. Isn't that considered a lie? Rob noticed that he was still holding the flowers. He threw them across the room and left without another word. Before Rob got home, he started receiving calls. What happened to let's just wait for her to come to her senses? Connie asked. I get the impression that coaxing your wife off a cliff has become part of my job description. Listen, Connie, what did you expect? Rob asked. As soon as she spoke, my built-in lie detector worked. What? Connie asked. My built-in lie detector, Rob said. It was the first time I spoke to her in a year, and instead of being grateful that I came to her in the first place, she started making fun of me again. This woman doesn't have an honest bone in her body. But you know, I suppose this is partly my fault. She'd been fooling me for so long that she naturally thought she could pull that trick again. Maybe she's right, Connie said. What? Rob asked. I think you're a fool too, Connie said, for 2 reasons. Not one at a time? Rob asked. I saw through her trick, he said. She didn't deceive me. The first reason, Connie said, you see a woman who doesn't care about you and who is trying to play some kind of game with you, although in reality this is not the case at all. You've never allowed her, or anyone else, to explain your feelings, and you probably never will. What I saw was a woman who loves you so much and desperately that she would do anything, even the stupidest things, to get you back. Yes, of course, Rob said. She only wants me back because her lovers won't want her until she gets better. She doesn't have lovers. Connie insisted. If there are any, they must be pretty perverted, sitting around night after night listening to her cry for you. You were madly, passionately in love with each other for 14 years. She behaved stupidly for 2 weeks, and without any thought or even giving her an explanation, you threw it all away. It makes me wonder if you were the one who wanted to leave. Rob glared at Connie again. The second reason you're a fool, she continued, is that you don't even tell yourself the truth. What great truth am I hiding? Rob asked. The fact is, no matter what she did, you never stopped loving Cheryl. The fact is you love that stupid woman as much as she loves you, Connie said. Now you're the fool here, Rob said. I can't stand her. She makes me sick. Then why aren't you in Michigan chasing your dreams? Connie asked. And Rob, before you answer and lie to yourself again, I was in her hospital room. I heard everything you said to her and saw you kiss her. What do you want from me? Rob asked. Just keep your promise, Connie said. After she gets better, you two can work it out or not, but we both obviously want her to get better, so let's just do it. You can start by coming back here. Rob returned to the hospital room after a while. Connie took his hand and led him to Cheryl's bed. Cheryl tried to sit up as he approached. She smiled and tried to run her good hand through her hair. Cheryl, stop it, Connie said sharply. We need to make a deal or you'll end up in a nursing home. We're all calling a truce until you get better. To make this time less unpleasant for everyone, we need to follow certain rules from now until the end of the truce. We are all just 3 friends. We will not talk about your past marriage or anything related to it. Is this clear? Connie asked. Yes, said Rob. Crystal, Cheryl replied. Rob, you will faithfully help Cheryl until she gets better, okay? Connie asked. Rob looked at her sharply. That's a pretty poor choice of words, considering I'm not the one who was unfaithful. Connie glared at him. I agree, Rob said. Cheryl, you will not provoke Rob. No schemes, no plans, no memories. Okay, I agree, Cheryl said, smiling. Rob, do you want to move her into your home, or will you move into your old house? Connie asked. Rob looked like he had been shot. Why can't she stay with you? He asked. Because 3 of us, or even 2, won't fit in my apartment. It's too small, Connie said. I know this will be the hardest for you, Rob, Connie said. If you go back to your place, she will know where you live. On the other hand, there are too many bad memories for you in the other house. We'll use her house, Rob said. This is our house, Cheryl responded sharply, starting to cry. This house you bought for me is still your house. Why is she crying? Asked Rob. Cheryl didn't wait for Connie to pass him a question. Because I love you so much, Rob, and you don't even trust me enough to let me know where you live. Connie knows where you live, and you've only known her for a few months. You can't wait for me to get better so you can move on with your life. I'm like broccoli to you. The doctor tells you to eat it for a few weeks to get rid of the rash, so you eat it for those weeks and then throw every single piece out of the house and never eat it again. You would rather go back to where I betrayed you than let me see your new home. While you're there, every time you pass by that room, you'll remember what happened there, and you'll hate me even more. By the time this is all over, I won't have a chance to get you back. You're not even talking to me now. You ask Connie everything even when I'm sitting right here. Rob began. You think I'm worthless, Cheryl said. I'm sitting here dying just for you to touch me like I've been doing for a year, and you don't even look at me. What a truce. You know what's funny? Rob, in your little speech, you said you were a fool. Well, me too, because I almost died in that accident yesterday. But I would do it again just so you could sit here and call me an easy girl and tell me how much you hate me. No, I changed my mind. Rob, you're a fool too because you can't understand how much I really love you. After that, no one spoke for a long time. More than 3 days passed before Cheryl was sent home. A hospital bed was set up in Cheryl's living room. Rob slept in the guest room, and when Connie stayed overnight, she slept in Rob and Cheryl's old room. Cheryl hadn't returned to that room since Rob left. It was too painful for her. Cheryl usually slept in the same room where Rob now slept. The first night he stayed there, he couldn't sleep because of her smell on the sheets. It almost drove him crazy. Rob or Connie had to stay with Cheryl almost constantly. She needed help with almost everything, including bowel movements and hygiene. The first time Rob had to help Cheryl, he nearly died from embarrassment. You can watch if you want, Rob said, grinning. That was before I knew I wasn't the only one into you, Rob responded sharply. Rob, you were the first and only, Cheryl said. Oh, I feel honored. Rob chuckled. Out of the millions of boyfriends you've had, I've been lucky enough to be with you more than once. It's a pity that I wasn't the last. Oh, but you'll be the last, Rob. I can guarantee it. Nobody touched me for over a year, and once you and I make love again, no one else will ever even see it. Well, maybe just the doctor who will deliver our children, Cheryl said. Rob just rolled his eyes. Let's go back to the truce, he said. When she had finished with the vessel, more than 2 days passed before Rob and Cheryl were able to speak to each other again. But they settled into a rhythm, watching TV together or talking every night after dinner, except for the nights Connie stayed with Cheryl to give Rob a break. As long as they didn't talk about the past or the possibility of them getting back together, they got along great. "Why did you buy this car?" Cheryl asked one day. "I don't know," Rob said. "I've always wanted one, and this seemed right." "Why didn't you buy it while we were together?" she asked. "We could afford it when we were together, as you call it. It was more important to me that we save money for our future, for our children, and for things that make you happy," Rob said. "What do you mean together, as I call it?" Cheryl asked. "Rob, I'm not trying to start a fight with you. I don't want to fight with you, but it's very important to me that you understand some things. Remember the rules of the truce," Rob said. "Okay, what's her name?" Cheryl asked. "Whose name?" Rob asked. "That car you wash every damn night. You know, Rob, both my legs are broken, so I can't go anywhere until the area around the studs hardens. I can't even sit in a wheelchair, so some nights, instead of watching TV or reading, I ask Connie to open the windows, and I watch you. This is my favorite activity. You run your hands over every inch of this car with such love, just as you used to do with me. You clean it and polish it the way you massaged me before. When you work on this car, you smile. This is the only time you smile. I would give my life for you to smile at me like that. And then, when it's all finished, and the car is washed and polished, you lean over and kiss the damn car, and my heart breaks because all the love that should be mine, you give to the car. So tell me, Rob, what is the name of this damn car?" By the end of the second week, the nurse began to gradually wean Cheryl off the pain medication drip. She was also given sleeping pills to help her sleep. The idea was that she would take painkillers during the day and sleeping pills at night. Cheryl tried her best to respect the truce, but often broke it. Every evening, no matter who she had to spend the night with, Rob or Connie, she always told Rob good night and that she loved him. Rob always chuckled and said, "Truce." Cheryl didn't know how long it went on, but one night she got really angry with Rob. They were watching a TV show, and Rob was crazy about the star of the show. Cheryl told him she was tired and wanted to sleep. Rob turned off the TV and gave her sleeping pills. It usually took effect on her very quickly, and she usually fell asleep within 20 minutes of taking it. But there was something different that night. Perhaps it was her anger. She couldn't sleep for a long time. Her thoughts were already on the verge of sleep when she noticed Rob looking around. She wondered what he was doing. Maybe he was looking for Connie. Maybe they would have a night while she slept. Rob looked around to make sure Connie wasn't around, and then surprised her even more. He walked over to Cheryl's bed and kissed her tenderly on the cheek. "Good night, darling." "I love you too," he said, and then went to bed alone. Cheryl couldn't believe this happened. How long had he been doing this? The next morning, Connie asked Cheryl why she was so angry. "He was crazy about some TV star right in front of me." Cheryl snapped. She decided not to tell Connie about the rest of her evening. "You're stupid," Connie said. "You should have watched this show with him. He only likes this woman because she looks like you." Cheryl suddenly realized that Connie was right. She also realized that she had very little time left before the cast was removed, and she would lose Rob. They had already spent almost 4 of their 6 to 8 weeks arguing about her jealousy over everything he touched. She only pushed Rob further away from her. When Rob returned home from work to relieve Connie, he found Cheryl looking through one of their old photo albums. As he approached her to pour her a drink, he watched in amazement as she leafed through old photographs. Cheryl thought it might help close the distance between them by reminding him of how they were together in the beginning when it was just the two of them. "Do you remember this?" she asked quietly, showing Rob a photo taken before the ship left port, taking them on their honeymoon. "God, how happy we were then," she said. "And we loved each other so much." Rob chuckled sarcastically. "One of us, for sure," he spat. Cheryl thought, at least he didn't leave and get angry. "I'm making progress." "Do you remember what happened that night?" she said dreamily. That night was special for both Cheryl and Rob. For Cheryl, it still remained that way. She didn't realize that things looked different for Rob now. He doubted that she had ever cared about him. "That was the night you made me a woman," she said dreamily. "Your woman." Cheryl thought about the times they remembered that night during their marriage, and Rob would just throw her on the floor and make love to her. Rob chuckled again, his face filled with anger. "Somehow with you, it always comes down to intim, doesn't it?" he said sharply. "You were a woman long before we met, and very special. I thought you were my woman when you said you loved me, so night has nothing to do with it. That night, I just started warming you up for the legion of men you'll eventually when you get tired of me. Rob, how many girlfriends did you have before we met? Asked Cheryl. To be honest, I know at least 5 or 6. So you're way ahead of me when it comes to cheating. The difference is that when I met you, I stopped, Rob said. I knew what it was, and I loved it, but I stopped for you. Since we met, there has been no one but you. I kept the vow we made. That's the difference. I've waited my whole life to meet you, Rob. You were my first. I love you more than you will ever understand. I loved making love to you. It was magical and special, and no one or nothing will ever come close to it. But I didn't know how special it was because I didn't have anything to compare it to. I just felt like all these stupid women in my office were doing all these incredible things that I had never experienced. Rob, it's partly your fault because you spoiled me. You made me feel like the most special woman in the world, and I just wanted to know what they were talking about. The first guy was young and full of energy, but it was terrible because he didn't know what to do with it and turned out to be a real idiot. He made me feel cheap and stupid. They told me to try with an older, more experienced man who would be gentle and caring. After that, you stopped making love to me. You told Connie that I let him take me. You were absolutely right. I just lay there and let him do it to get it over with and agreed with what he was saying. He said something about how I wanted him to make me a baby. Rob, I swear on my life that at that moment, I was thinking about what I would make you for dinner. That's why I said something like come on or yes, I want it. I had already decided then never to do this again. I never had the opportunity to experiment as a teenager like everyone else did. Rob, I didn't go into the back seat of the car like other teenagers, so I went crazy for a couple of weeks, and you can't forgive me? 14 years of happiness must outweigh 2 weeks of stupidity. Rob, if you had stopped after the first guy, I would have been angry, but we could have worked through it, Rob said. You could have explained to me what you just told me, and we could have found a way out. But after that, it was already too late. You put your friends from work above us and your need for other men too. So now you can experiment and compare as much as you want. You no longer have anyone to betray. I don't care how many guys you try in the car, as long as it's not my car. He shrugged. But I don't understand why you didn't just come to me and say, Rob, everything has been great, but there are things I want to try that I can't do by staying with you. It would have been fair and correct. I would have given you a divorce, and as soon as I left or you moved, you could start sleeping with anyone. Why play me like a fool? All it did was make me hate you because you're an idiot. Rob, Cheryl replied sharply, you weren't a fool, and I wanted to stay with you. I loved you then as much as I love you now. I will love you even more in a year. I just made a mistake. Can't you understand it? Rob, I'm not perfect. I made the wrong decision. I was stupid. You and I were made for each other, but I ruined everything. I regret it every day. The day you left me, I wanted to die. The only day I can say was the worst was the day I received the divorce papers or the day the judge approved the divorce. I have nightmares about it every day. The next day, Rob took Cheryl to the hospital to have the cast removed from her arm. He drove her back home and helped her get into bed. When he returned home from work, an unfamiliar man was in the dining room. Connie and Cheryl were there too. Cheryl looked at Rob and smiled. They hadn't spoken since the day they fought over the lie detector test. Sit down, Rob, Cheryl said. At first, Rob thought the man was a doctor, but then he realized that something else was going on. The man asked Cheryl question after question, and she answered them. The man then turned to Rob and handed him the printout. Here are your wife's test results, the man said. Ex-wife, Rob corrected him. Not according to the test results, the man said. I asked her if she was your wife. She replied that according to the law we are divorced, but I was against it, and in my heart, I still consider myself his wife. She didn't lie. I asked her if she had cheated on you. She confessed to 3 incidents. I asked if there was anyone else. She said no, and that's true. I asked her if she had fun these 3 times. She said no, and that's also true. I asked her if she wanted the last guy to get her pregnant. She said, hell no, and that's true. I asked her if she wanted to get pregnant. She said yes, very much, but she wanted it to be you. I asked her if she loved anyone else besides you. She said no, and this is true. I asked her if she loved you. She said yes, and that's been the case from the moment she met you, and it's true. What did I tell you? Cheryl said. The man handed Rob a cuff similar to the one used to measure blood pressure. Rob backed down. Now it's your turn, sir, the man said. I have a list of questions for you too. Rob looked at the questions. There were only 5 questions on the list. "I don't have to do this," he said and headed for the door. Question number 1, Cheryl shouted. Did you like what Cheryl was doing? You will answer yes, and it will be true. Question number 2, do you hate Cheryl? You'll say yes again, but it's going to be a lie. Rob, question number 3, do you want things to return to normal? You wanted it as much as I do, she shouted. Rob slammed the door shut. Question number 4, do you want me back? You'll say no, and you'll lie again. And question number 5, Rob, do you still love me? You will say no and lie again. Cheryl, you're talking nonsense. Rob shouted as he returned to the room. Rob, you too, she replied sharply. You're just stubborn. If you hate me so much, then why do you tell me that you love me and kiss me goodnight every night when you think I'm sleeping? Rob, you even kissed me in the hospital. Why is it so hard for you to be honest? The only thing that separates us now is your damn ego and the fact that you have already betrayed what we had. Rob said, I won't let you hurt me again. Never. Regardless of how I feel. They sat for a long time, glaring at each other, and then Rob walked up the stairs to his room. You pushed him too hard, Cheryl, Connie said. I know, Cheryl said, crying, but he pisses me off so much sometimes. When I look at him, I want so badly to just touch him, but I can't. When we watch TV together in the evenings, it drives me crazy that I can't kiss him or hug him. I just feel pain all the time. I'm desperate. I thought that maybe when he saw the test results, he would at least understand that I was telling him the truth. I'm not sure he even noticed, Connie said, but I'm sure when you tried to get him to take the test too, it was a bad idea. Cheryl, I've told you from the beginning that we need to proceed slowly and carefully. We see it differently than men. For most men, cheating on their woman is a blow to their ego and masculinity. What you call curiosity or experimentation will be perceived by most men as not being important enough to you. If he takes you back for some reason, he will have to face the fact that many people will consider him a weakling. So, no matter how much he loves you, and let's face it, we know he does, all you did was push him even further away from you. Cheryl nodded. I know, Connie, but I'm desperate. In 2 weeks, the plaster cast will be removed from my legs. My legs will be weak, but I will be able to move. There will be no reason for him to stay here. I have 14 days to get my husband back. Well, did you like it when he came over every night and kissed you goodnight? Connie asked. Of course I liked it, Cheryl replied. This is the best part of my day. Well, you just lost it. Now he'll never do it again after you told him that, Connie said. Just as Connie predicted, everything changed that night. Rob still took care of Cheryl like he promised, but this was different. Since she could now use her arm, he no longer helped her in the bathroom. When he brought her dinner, even though she no longer had to feed him, he no longer sat with her and talked or watched TV. Cheryl missed the tender goodnight kisses and the quiet words of love that Rob whispered, thinking she was sleeping. No matter what she said or did, Rob never spoke to her again except to ask if she needed help or what she wanted for dinner. He simply refused to engage in any conversation with her. Exactly 2 weeks after their argument over the lie detector test, Cheryl had the cast removed from her legs. Her legs were still weak, and she had several weeks of physical therapy ahead of her. Doctors also told her she would likely be left with a slight limp due to one leg being slightly longer than the other after surgery to repair a damaged ankle. None of this mattered. Cheryl found it difficult to breathe and could not stop crying. She knew Rob would probably leave as soon as he took her home, and there was nothing she could do about it. When they drove home from the hospital, he still didn't say a word to her. He carried her very gently from the car, even though the doctors told her to start walking short distances and getting up to do things on her own. He went upstairs, and when he came back, he had his suitcases. He had already packed his things. Cheryl's eyes filled with tears. He walked to the door and placed the suitcases on the floor. When she raised her head, he was standing over her. You were right, he began. I didn't want to take your stupid test because I still love you more than I can bear. I hate what you did to us, but I don't think I could ever love anyone the way I love you. Then why should you leave? She asked quietly. Because after what happened between us, I can never trust you again, Cheryl. You were everything in my life. You hurt me too much for us to fix this. We need to move on, he said. No, she said sharply. There is no longer a way forward for me. The only thing I understand in this whole story is that you are the only one for me. I don't care how long I have to wait, I'll be waiting. If we get back together when we're 80, I'll still be here, and I'll still be yours. Maybe you can move on and find yourself some hot young chick or a more experienced older woman. I won't like this, Rob. This hurts me greatly, but I'm sure that in the end, you will return to me. It's just a matter of time. I think you'll go to bars, meet a few girls, and have an intimate with them, and then realize we wasted a lot of damn time. Rob leaned down and kissed her very gently on the lips, and then he left. For over 3 months, neither Cheryl nor Connie heard from Rob. Cheryl and Connie remained friends, but there was a hint of sadness in their relationship. They never talked about Rob. Connie returned to bars and casual night. She tried to interest Cheryl in dating or at least going out, but to no avail. Remember what happened the last time you pulled me out? Cheryl said. And then one day, it happened. They both received it on the same day, Rob's wedding invitation. Cheryl's heart was broken. She sincerely expected him to return to her. She thought he would probably have a few flings and intimate and then come home to her. He even confessed to her that he loved her. She didn't expect him to fall in love with someone else. Will you go? Connie asked hesitantly. Yes, Cheryl replied. Why? Connie asked. Why put yourself through such pain? Because I love him so much, Cheryl said. I want him to be happy more than anything in the world. I really want him to be with me again, but if that's not possible, I still want him to be happy. So I'll take any opportunity to see him. 2 weeks later, Connie and Cheryl got out of Connie's car at a church they had never been to. They were a little late, but they noticed that a lot of people were still standing outside, so they weren't in a hurry. Cheryl noticed that there were many Mustangs parked near the church. Here they are, said a voice in the crowd. Looks like he's winning again. Cheryl craned her neck to see what was happening. She saw a black Mustang, which was clearly speeding, and another car slightly behind it. The 2 cars entered the final turn, and the driver of the black Mustang slammed on the brakes. The car spun 180 degrees, leaving tire tracks in the parking lot, and stopped at the curb a split second before the other car, a white Mustang. The cars were parked nose to nose, and the crowd outside the church was cheering. Rob stepped out of the black Mustang. As he closed the door, he saw a tall, slender, but curvy woman who seemed vaguely familiar to Cheryl get out of the white car, and she looked angry. Damn it, Rob, you cheated, the woman blurted out. Nothing like that, he shouted back. No, the woman said, offended. While she was speaking, she took off her flat shoes. Someone from the crowd handed her a pair of white high-heeled shoes. The woman was wearing a very strange dress. The bodice was white, made of brocade with small pearls and rhinestones sewn onto it. However, it ended with very short boxer shorts. She was wearing white thigh-high stockings, and the heels she had just put on made her incredible legs look even longer. Connie winced, thinking that this woman's legs were even better than her own before the accident. I won fair and square. Now pass on the winnings, Rob said, his eyes burning with fire. You won't get anything, the woman snapped. Something in her face haunted Cheryl's memory. Someone in the crowd handed the woman a long silk skirt, which she snapped up, completing her very elegant wedding attire. Someone also gave Rob a tuxedo jacket. The woman looked at Rob angrily, but then, when he put on his jacket, her face melted into a smile that conveyed her feelings for Rob to everyone present. Okay, you win, even though you cheated, the woman said. Here's your prize. She stepped into Rob's arms, and they kissed for a long time. I love you, Rob, the woman said, and Cheryl's heart broke. Me too, Molly, Rob repeated, and then they entered the church. Cheryl fell to her knees, ruining the dress she had spent a week's salary on. She couldn't go into that church and watch Rob marry Molly. She knew that Rob was exactly what Molly was looking for. Molly was about 13 years younger than Cheryl and would make a great wife for Rob. They both wanted the same thing. Molly had had her fair share of modeling days, and she wouldn't succumb to temptation or deception like Cheryl did. She wished Rob happiness in her mind and then went home to cry alone. She made her choice when she decided to change, and even though this bed was lonely, she would have to lie in it for the rest of her life. Cheryl sank into an even deeper depression. She was very sad for about a month and hardly left the house. Over time, she got a little better. She joined several volunteer groups to occupy her time and took on more responsibilities at work. She even went on a few dates, but they were complete failures. In one case, she even looked at a man's face while they were ordering food at a restaurant and began shaking her head. I need to leave, she told him. She realized that there was simply no point in her being there because she would only love one man. Nothing could take away the pain in her heart, but there were times when she could forget about it for a few minutes. One such moment was the time she spent helping in an orphanage. Cheryl always looked at the children and wondered what her and Rob's children would look like. Almost 8 months after almost attending Rob's wedding, Cheryl sat at her desk. A tall woman with long light brown hair approached her. Cheryl looked up and saw Molly looking at her angrily. Before Cheryl could say anything, Molly swung her hand and hit her hard in the face. Cheryl's head snapped back and she fell out of her chair. Connie and several other women from the office ran over to see what was happening. "If you try something like that again, I'll hit you much harder next time," Molly said calmly. Cheryl was confused. "Why did you hit me, Molly?" she asked. "You should be happy, not angry. You won the race." "Yeah, but it's not that fun to drive someone else's car," Molly snapped. "He is yours and will always be yours. Let's go. We have a lot to do and not enough damn time." Cheryl started to get up, but Connie stepped between her and Molly. "She's not going anywhere with you," Connie said sharply. "Listen, fat girl," Molly said, "this doesn't concern you. She can come with me and regain her happiness, or she can stay here with you and be depressed and withdrawn for the rest of her life. In a way, I hope she doesn't go." Molly then headed towards the exit. Before she reached the door, Cheryl was already on her heels. Rob's black Mustang pulled up outside his house next to his wife's white Mustang. He got out of the car and inserted the key into the lock before noticing a note taped to the door. He read the note and smiled. Rob imagined that the world had experienced an apocalyptic event. Technology was no longer there to help us, and most of humanity had been destroyed. You wander blindly through the wasteland, sleeping in burnt-out buildings or wherever you have to, finding shelter and a roof over your head. On this particular evening, you find the bedroom upstairs. You get into bed and undress, only to discover that someone is already there. It's a woman, but for some reason, she can't speak. You can't talk either, and she is also completely without anything. What happens next is up to you. Remember, you both can't talk, so you must express your feelings for her in a different way, and don't turn on the light. Rob laughed. Molly was always coming up with something new to keep their personal lives fresh. This was another of her role-playing fantasies. Well, he could do it. He walked up the stairs and entered their bedroom. The curtains were closed, and the room was completely dark. He went to the bed and found that she was not there. "Molly," he said. "Damn it, Rob, no talking." Remember, he heard her say. "I rearranged the furniture, so come find me." "Now shut up, or you won't get anything." Rob looked around the room carefully, trying to feel the space around him. He came across a long, relatively narrow pillar. It looked like one of the legs of their massive sleigh bed. He moved his hand forward and found the mattress. He took off his jacket and pants. While he was doing this, he heard someone exhale heavily. His shirt and boxers joined his pants on the floor, and he climbed onto the bed, but something felt strange. Molly's breasts didn't seem the same as usual. Maybe it was because she was lying down, and her chest was a little flattened. Although the night was brief, it was incredibly intense, and Rob was exhausted. Molly leaned back, kissed him deeply, and then stood up from the bed. She went to the bathroom. Molly never liked to cuddle after intim until she was cleaned up a bit, so Rob wasn't surprised. He lay in the darkness for a few more seconds until he heard Molly's voice put an end to the fantasy. "How do you like it, Rob?" she asked. "It was the best," Rob said. "The best of me or the best of the last few years?" Molly asked. "Neither," Rob said. "It was the best night of my life. The first time was wild and rough, the second time was gentler and more romantic. It was the best of both worlds, and the way you moved, darling, was just perfect." Molly turned on the light. Rob had a hard time focusing, but it looked like Molly was sitting on her suitcases, fully dressed. "How did you get dressed so quickly?" asked Rob. "Honey, I was dressed the whole time," Molly replied. "What's going on here?" asked Rob. "Rob, I love you," Molly said. "Is it true? Remember the offer I received a few weeks ago to return to modeling?" "Yes," said Rob. "I told you I would go to New York with you if that's what you really want." "I know you would go, Rob. You are a wonderful person. I really love you. We would have a great life together, and you would have a good time," Molly said. "But I don't want you to just feel good. I want you to be happy. But with me, you could never be happy." "What do you mean?" asked Rob. "Rob, don't you even notice that sometimes during night, you call me Cheryl?" "I'm sorry," Rob said. "It's probably just a habit. We have been together for a long time. I thought so too for a while, Molly said. But lately, you've been crying in your sleep and saying, I love you, Cheryl, while you sleep. That's why I decided to give you an intimate test today. Well, I passed it, didn't I? Asked Rob. Today was wonderful. I told you it was the best intimate I've ever had with anyone. No, Rob, Molly said. You failed. Today was the best night of your life because it was with the person you were meant to be with. Rob looked at her like she was crazy. Molly shrugged her shoulders and walked over to the bed. She hugged Rob and kissed him. I left the divorce papers on the kitchen table. We've been together for less than a year, so there's nothing to share. You two should definitely name that damn kid after me, she said. She pulled away from him and looked at her watch. Damn, she said. I need to catch a plane. And Rob, please don't ruin this. Don't make my sacrifice meaningless. Just follow your heart, it will be the right decision. As Molly left the room, she yelled at Rob, and don't you dare drive my damn Mustang. Send it to me. Then he heard the front door slam shut. The bathroom door opened, and Cheryl came out. Please don't be mad, Rob, she said. I wasn't trying to trick you or anything. When she offered me this, I couldn't refuse. I missed you so much. Rob shook his head as Cheryl continued talking. I really wanted it to be romantic and beautiful, but I was too excited, she said. I wanted you so much. It's been so long. Rob, I'll let you decide what happens next. I'm so sorry. I just love you so much. Rob took Cheryl's hand and pulled her towards the door. Rob, please don't make me leave, she began. Rob put a finger to her lips to silence her and turned off the light, sending the room back into pitch darkness. She felt him pull her towards the bed and lift her onto it. Suddenly, he stopped. Sorry, he said. I should have asked first. Is this what you want? What do you mean by it? Rob, she asked. Well, just being friends with benefits, he said. You know, from time to time we'll call each other and meet if that's what you want. Rob, she said, I'm just happy to be with you in any way I can. It's not exactly what I need, he said. Maybe it should just be a one-time meeting. What do you need? Rob asked, almost crying. I can be what you need. I promise. I don't know, he said. This may be hard for you. Give me a chance. Rob, I'll do anything, she said. Anything. Okay, then you'll have to marry me again, he said. First thing in the morning, Rob. But today, we have a lot of lost time that we need to make up for. I love you, Cheryl, he said. I want us to forget about the past and move forward. But if you ever give me reason to even think that you might cheat on me again, I will leave, and we will never exist again. Rob, I swear it will never happen again. This time I know what I have, and I won't risk it for anything. 3 weeks later, at their second wedding, Connie, Cheryl's maid of honor, met her future husband. Rob and Cheryl managed to save their relationship this time, and as they both wanted, they grew old together. At the 50th wedding anniversary celebration, when a friend asked Rob about the secret that had kept them together and happy for so long, Rob replied, Molly, faith, patience, and love. Hey, said the friend. Aren't these your children's names? Yes, Cheryl said. The first one we named after an old friend, Molly, without whom we would never have gotten back together after the stupid thing I did years ago. We named our next daughter Vera, Rob said, because without Cheryl's belief that we were meant for each other, we wouldn't exist. I really lost hope for us, no matter how much I loved her. We named our next daughter Patience, he continued, because Cheryl had to be very patient with me. It took me a long time to fully trust her again, and there were many times when I just got really mad at her out of the blue. And we named our last daughter Love, Cheryl said, because in the end, it was our love for each other that really mattered and kept us going. What do you think of our second half of the story? In my opinion, the man is right to refuse to believe in his place. What do you think? Let me know in the comments. See you in the next video.